Good morning, everyone. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am Sten Arne Rosnes, Ambassador of Norway to the United Arab Emirates. I have been invited by the Chair of the Council, Uruguay, represented by Mr. Fitzgerald Cantero, National Director of Energy of Uruguay, to chair this morning's deliberations in my capacity as Vice Chair of the Council. I declare open the second day of the 24th meeting of the Council of the International Renewable Energy Agency. Colleagues, before we take up agenda item 7, I would just like to recall that this item was scheduled for yesterday's proceedings. In order for us to complete our business today, I would like to remind delegations to keep interventions to 3 minutes, and we will have the bell to gently remind you to conclude. Thank you for your understanding. I invite the Council to turn to agenda item 7, programmatic discussion on accelerating hydrogen, opportunities for international cooperation. In preparation for discussions under this item, a background note with the same title, set out in document C/24/BN/1, has been circulated. I now invite the Director General to introduce the topic. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. So, Excellencies, distinguished participants, it is my pleasure to introduce the next session, where Dolf Gillen, Director of IRENA Innovation Technology Center, will provide an overview of the incredible work the agency has completed since the last Council meeting. As we know, there has been a tremendous amount of activity in the area of hydrogen, and IRENA has been delving into the topic since 2018. But it is clear that, like so many parts of the energy transition, it is time to collaborate closer to accelerate the production, delivery, and the use of green hydrogen. We too have matured in our way of thinking to be more collaborative with our members, partners, and industry. This has mostly taken place through the collaborative framework on green hydrogen and in associated topics in other collaborative framework. As Dolf will outline, we have been very busy with key global initiatives. These include, all in the last few months, the Breakthrough Agenda, the G7 Hydrogen Action Pact, the undertaking of a global hydrogen certification gap analysis with RMI and the Hydrogen Council, launching a project for quality infrastructure with the PTB, continuing our partnership with the World Economic Forum on the Clean Hydrogen Acceleration Initiative. The IRENA Secretariats remain ready to assist you to take full advantage of the tremendous opportunity for collaboration on offer, for an increasing uptake in and the use of green hydrogen, which will lead us towards achievable emission reduction. I will now hand, with your permission, Mr. Chair, over to Dolf. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Globally, hydrogen is seen as a key part of the energy transition. Attention continues to grow. And our message today is that now more than ever it's time to collaborate closer to accelerate the development of green hydrogen as a key pillar of the energy transition. As the Director General just elaborated, we have been very busy. Earlier this year, you may recall, we issued a report on the geopolitics of hydrogen, or geopolitics of energy transition, the hydrogen factor, and various policy reports. We more recently, since the last Council, we worked on the Glasgow breakthroughs on the Hydrogen Action Pact, and I will give you a brief overview of the work that has been done in that context. Also, the collaborative framework on green hydrogen met 3 weeks ago and discussed the issue of certification and the need for quality infrastructure. And we've been working also on enabling measures roadmaps with the World Economic Forum. So a lot of documents have been prepared. A number of documents are in preparation. The ones here you can all find on our website, on a very nice new revamped website, I should say. And others will follow the coming weeks. So in terms of momentum, it's 135 countries with a national hydrogen strategy covering 80% of world population, so that's a good indicator of how prominent this topic is worldwide. So one of the aspects that deserves attention in terms of international collaboration is long-term trade. So we've done an analysis, concluded that around a quarter of all hydrogen will be traded internationally long-term, half by pipelines, half by ships. So, that requires an enabling framework to make that happen, and these standards and certification systems, but also the infrastructure for the logistics are critical elements in that context. So IRENA, together with the IEA and the high-level climate champions, has prepared a report for the Glasgow Breakthrough Agenda Coalition that looks into enabling frameworks for a number of key sectorial transitions, including hydrogen economy. Number of priority actions have been identified, and a timeline has been developed for their implementation that is summarized in this graph. Priority actions include setting quota for low carbon hydrogen, establishing a common methodology for calculating greenhouse gas emissions, and alignment of priority on end-use applications. And the overview of the recommended actions is provided here. So de-risking, notably demand security and financing, is a top priority, and in response, various financial institutions will launch new financing initiatives at the COP and G20 meetings in the next couple of weeks. Also, in a national and EU context, as well as critical initiatives such as H2 Global try to close this gap, and I think we'll hear some comments on that later. There are a lot of international initiatives around the topic of hydrogen. IRENA is already collaborating with around 23 of these, and there may be more, and there are coming new ones all the time. So it's very important to ensure that there is consistency and that there are synergies between these various activities. And that is an important part of what we're doing, trying to establish that. The dotted boxes show the core group that worked with us on the work on certification and the support for the G7 analysis that I'll discuss in a moment. We worked with the Rocky Mountain Institute and the Hydrogen Council on the certification issue. We worked with the International Partnership on Hydrogen Economy for the standards development. And we worked with the World Economic Forum on creating enabling measures roadmaps for countries. And of course, we work with many of you members through the global initiatives shown on this slide. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the findings. So the first one is on the standards and certification. I said that's widely seen now as a critical and urgent component to facilitate international trade. So what we did for the German G7 presidency is prepare an inventory of which standards and certification are out there and what are their characteristics. To date, we have identified 9 voluntary schemes, 5 mandatory schemes, and 6 schemes that are in preparation. So there are many. And most of them are national schemes, a few are international. They have a differing labels. Some focus on low carbon, green, clean, or renewable. They have different thresholds, ranging from a kilo of CO2 per kilo of hydrogen to more than 4 kilos of CO2 per kilo of hydrogen. There are differences in the boundaries that are applied. So some include upstream emissions, some only include a conversion, some also include the transportation of the hydrogen in the overall calculation. And there are different certification instruments, designs, methodologies for greenhouse gas emission assessment, etc. So the point is, if you really want a deep global market, all of this needs to be harmonized. You cannot have these different schemes across the board. It's fine if you start trading, but longer term, this needs to be harmonized. And so we looked at some voluntary schemes. There is also some mandatory schemes, but it's a bit the same conclusions here. So all with a bit different assumptions and different approaches. So it's time for collective ambition and joint measures. Global hydrogen diplomacy needs to be about emission reductions, not just about trade. There's a need to develop a common set of characteristics and methodologies. There's a need to share common platform for experiences, such as regulatory sandboxes. There's a need for a common methodology to measure greenhouse gas emissions along the supply chain. There's a need for common quality infrastructure guidance for national bodies, and there's a need to support the decarbonization in potential export countries through alignment of hydrogen certification. And there could be a role for the collaborative framework on green hydrogen, the IRENA collaborative framework, to share info, lesson learned, and collaborate on this important topic. Now, we also did some work in support of the G7 Hydrogen Action Pact. So that was agreed in May 22. G7 represents about 28% of global hydrogen demand, and expectation is long term for 30 to 40% of the imports. So it has a global relevance. And the goal of the Hydrogen Action Pact is to accelerate development of low carbon and renewable hydrogen and power-to-X value chains at domestic and global scale, with an emphasis on hard to decarbonize sectors. We assisted in developing recommendations how to operationalize the Hydrogen Action Pact. And recommendations are focused on the need to align certification, as just discussed, to share info and lessons learned, such as regulatory sandboxes for hydrogen valleys, the need to balance the focus on supply and demand, and especially promote industrial uptake, and to conduct outreach on the priority areas for hydrogen in hard to decarbonize sectors, and to clarify industry expectations, and to collaborate not only among the G7 countries, but also with the Global South and potential exporting nations. So there is a quite detailed report that also analyzes in detail the frameworks in these G7 countries that will be released at the COP. And I think it's worth a look, because it points out to important differences in emphasis, to some areas for synergies, but also some differences in these frameworks at the country level. So in 2021, as part of the Accelerating Clean Hydrogen Initiative, IRENA worked with the World Economic Forum to produce the enabling measures roadmaps for green hydrogen. And that has been deployed already end of last year for COP26 for the EU and for Japan. And that is currently being deployed also for China, and the intent is to deploy that further. It looks into 6 key challenges in a national or regional context, so cost, standard and certification, demand, infrastructure, pace of deployment, and technology as the key barriers and enabling factors are formulated, enabling actions are formulated, how to facilitate how to overcome these barriers. So, and as I said, I mean, we're currently working on the China case. Idea is to launch that at WEF Davos meeting in early next year. But the intent is very much also to expand that to MENA, Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and India. So, to complement this road mapping, WEF has launched the Clean Hydrogen Project Accelerator that tries to learn from best practices in transition. So practical cases, 4 such cases have been assessed, and they will be also presented at COP. And IRENA is a supporter of that accelerator initiative. So focus on financing is, for example, urgent. Recently, the Hydrogen Council concluded there's more than 500 hydrogen projects under development, $240 billion of investments, but only about 10% of these projects has reached a final investment decision. So there is a need to work on financing in the next stage. And as I said, that is clearly now becoming an important priority. Now, in terms of the timeline for the IRENA hydrogen activities, as I said, the G7 analysis will be issued at the COP in a few weeks. IRENA will host a Hydrogen Day at our pavilion on the 16th of November in the Blue Zone, so you're all invited. And after COP, we will organize another workshop for the G7 to kick off the next phase of the Hydrogen Action Pact with planned implementation of the recommendations. We will meet with the new co-facilitators of the collaborative framework to plan the next topics and activities. We will progress our work to work with the German Metrology Institute, PTB, on quality infrastructure, and I mentioned the enabling framework of China that will be issued together with the World Economic Forum. We are also keen to assist the Japanese G7 presidency next year, as well as the India G20 presidency, and hydrogen topics will also be on the agenda there. That concludes my remarks. We have prepared a few questions. They were also in the note you received. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director General and Mr. Dolph Gielen. I now open the floor for comments. I now give the floor to Germany. You have the floor, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to everybody. First, thank you to IRENA for putting this important issue on the Council agenda. Very much appreciate that. The topic of hydrogen is very much at the top of Germany's energy priority list in terms of policy making. And we are nationally taking very strong steps in order to make progress on both producing green hydrogen nationally and creating the conditions for importing hydrogen. That is because green hydrogen and its derivatives are a key technology for the full decarbonization of our economy, especially in the hard-to-abate sectors such as primary steel production, the chemical industry, as well as aviation and shipping. At the same time, of course, clean green hydrogen is still an infant industry, and we need to make a lot of progress to drive down the price of low carbon and renewable hydrogen compared to fossil-based equivalents. So to kickstart this global hydrogen economy, we have to accelerate and strengthen our joint action in this area. As Dolph already eloquently explained, Germany has put this issue for that reason also on our agenda during the G7, launching the Hydrogen Action Pact in May this year. Dolph talked about the key goals. I won't repeat those for the sake of time. Also, Dolph showed this chart depicting the multitude of initiatives we already have in the area. So I want to stress that the intention with the Action Pact is not to create another additional institutional structure, but rather to work on better coordinating the work already taken forward in different initiatives in order to advance global value chains and facilitating a regulatory framework for international trade in low carbon and renewable hydrogen. In our view, IRENA, with its collaborative framework on green hydrogen and the recent report series on global hydrogen trade, is ideally placed to facilitate such processes. So we're very happy to ask and receive support from IRENA on our work on the Hydrogen Action Pact. So the work that was carried out was also already described with the independent assessment of the status of policy and international cooperation and the recommendations to develop enabling measures and regulatory frameworks for the acceleration of hydrogen. And also, very importantly, the gap analysis of global hydrogen certification, where we absolutely need a common understanding what we are talking about when we use the terms low carbon hydrogen, clean renewable hydrogen, in order to facilitate trade, that we all mean the same thing in these interactions. Based on the detailed analysis by IRENA, we really made significant progress. We agreed on areas in which concerted G7 action and action also beyond the G7 can have the largest impact, and how to translate the goals of the Hydrogen Action Pact into concrete actions on the ground. As Dolph said, the results will be presented at the upcoming COP. We very much look forward to that. I want to thank IRENA once more for the excellent work in support of our G7 presidency. Also, to further take this work forward, Germany feels honored to serve as the co-facilitator of the IRENA collaborative framework on green hydrogen for the next 2 years, together with the United Arab Emirates. which is also making very bold moves in development of the hydrogen economy. So far, the policy focus has mainly been on the supply side, so we also need to pay attention of balancing this with the development of demand and creating predictability and security both for producers and off-takers on market development in order to so make progress synchronized both on the supply and the demand side. Finishing my intervention, Germany would also like to suggest that this balancing act between the supply and demand side should be a focus of further IRENA work in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the Republic of Korea. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Hydrogen economy is not only a game changer to transform the current energy market, but also an opportunity to find a new engine for economic growth. With this in mind, Korea enacted legislation relating to hydrogen on February 2020, the first hydrogen law in the world. The new Korean government is aiming to foster the world's #1 hydrogen industry. We are now trying to accomplish our own technological competencies in 5 major areas: electrolysis, fuel cells, hydrogen-powered ships, hydrogen vehicles, and gas turbines with hydrogen. We are already seeing some initial success in building the hydrogen ecosystem. Korea ranks #1 globally in terms of deployment of hydrogen vehicles and fuel cells. Overall, Korea is making efforts to establish a clean hydrogen supply chain to foster an entire life cycle of hydrogen economy, covering hydrogen production, distribution, and utilization. Indeed, enlarging cooperation in hydrogen sector is one of our priorities. In particular, in order to support the developing countries in the net zero goals, last October, our Prime Minister visited 3 Latin American countries to exchange views on cooperation in the hydrogen sector. We are also exploring bilateral cooperation opportunities in terms of new industries, such as renewable and green hydrogen, with other developing countries as well. Moreover, we launched Korea's first large-scale green hydrogen demonstration project on 29th September this year. And during the launch event, Jeju Island announced its plan to build Jeju Global Hub for green hydrogen and the vision to become a global hub for green hydrogen. Policy coordination and technology cooperation between countries is crucial to develop and activate clean hydrogen ecosystem. Given the IRENA's significant role as a platform for member states, we hope the IRENA could provide opportunities to strengthen our partnership in this area during the IRENA Assembly next January. Since the past assemblies were held online due to the pandemic, we look forward to meeting all delegations in person in the next assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to El Salvador. You have the floor, please.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Buenos días. Agradecemos el excelente trabajo realizado y presentado por IRENA en hidrógeno verde. Alentamos a la agencia a seguir realizando esta labor en apoyo a los Estados miembros y esperamos trabajar de la mano en una hoja de ruta para el desarrollo del hidrógeno verde en El Salvador para ser utilizado en nuestra industria. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Canada. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Gieland, for the presentation. So Canada commends IRENA's leadership in advancing our collective understanding of the issues surrounding the scale-up of the global hydrogen economy, and in proposing policy recommendations to accelerate its deployment. I also want to note that Canada is very pleased with, as Mr. Gieland presented, the leadership in IRENA in coordinating and collaborating with other hydrogen-focused organizations globally. So Canada launched its hydrogen strategy in 2020 and has since been working on its implementation. Some of our priority areas include the standardization of codes, carbon intensity determination and certification, electrolyzer supply chains, demonstration of projects in different industrial sectors, and hydrogen delivery using different modes of transportation. To execute on these priorities, so we have notably assembled a dedicated codes and standards working group involving industry. And Canada's National Research Council is developing a carbon intensity methodology in alignment with international best practices to serve as the basis of future certification. We are also providing support to foster commercial-scale hydrogen projects through funding programs and putting agreements in place to match future Canadian exports with global demands, such as the Canada-Germany Hydrogen Alliance and an MOU with the Netherlands. So moving forward, Canada encourages IRENA to continue its excellent work and its leadership on standards and certification, and to further analyze global hydrogen and electrolyzer supply chains. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Norway. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Today, I'm pleased to give you some perspectives on the Norwegian government's hydrogen policy. To reach the goals in the Paris Agreement, hydrogen produced with low to zero emissions may contribute to decarbonize our hard-to-abate sectors in alignment with the Paris Agreement. In Norway, we see that hydrogen could play a role in reducing CO2 emissions from the industry and maritime sector. When it comes to production of hydrogen, what matters should be that we produce enough volumes of hydrogen with low to zero emissions at the lowest possible costs. We believe this is best secured by competitive energy markets with efficient pricing of greenhouse gas emissions. The Norwegian government firmly believes in developing a coherent value chain for hydrogen where production, distribution, and usage are developed in parallel. Norway is well positioned to take part in green and blue hydrogen value chains and in the development of a market for hydrogen. Blue hydrogen is regarded as the realistic alternative for large-scale production in the short term. In the longer term, production of hydrogen could be coupled with renewable power from, for example, offshore wind power from Norway. The government supports the development of hydrogen through a broad range of measures, including financial support and requirements in public procurements. Most importantly, we have a price on CO2 emissions through the CO2 tax. The government also supports R&D projects and finance demonstration, pilot, and development projects. The funding for hydrogen-related projects has increased throughout the past years in Norway, and we now see a rapid increase in projects under development through both public and private funding. There are ongoing projects in the maritime sector that will establish hubs for production and use of green hydrogen, the focus on developing hydrogen and ammonia-driven ships, and we see new production projects, both green and blue, all over Norway. If we are to succeed with developing hydrogen as an efficient tool to mitigate climate change, we need international collaboration. Hydrogen could play a role in a low-emission society, both globally and in Norway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Japan. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the comprehensive presentation from Dr. Giren. Japan has been promoting our energy policy toward a hydrogen-using society, having its national hydrogen strategy that was announced in 2017. We held the 5th hydrogen ministerial meeting last month, and we really appreciate the participation of Director General Mr. Lacomera and many representatives from countries at the ministerial meeting. We released the chair's summary for accelerating the Tokyo Statement and the Global Action Agenda for Hydrogen, including additional goals on the amount of low carbon and green hydrogen to be produced by 2030 of at least 90 million tons per year globally. Needless to say, international cooperation is key to realize hydrogen society, and Japan will continue to promote various initiatives to establish an international hydrogen supply chain. Also, we'll invest $4 billion in hydrogen projects from the Japan's Green Innovation Fund to reduce hydrogen cost. In addition to further reducing the cost of hydrogen carrier, including liquefied hydrogen, and developing technologies to lower the cost of fuel cells in the demand side, we will increase the scalable economy through the penetration of using hydrogen in power generation and creating large demand in various sectors like transport and industries, especially hard-to-abate sectors. Japan also co-hosted with IRENA and the GCF a workshop and symposium for 6 countries to strengthen their capacity to access climate finance and promote green hydrogen utilization in March this year. We'd like to continue such collaborative activities with IRENA and the member countries and pursue synergies with other international platforms and organizations to realize the hydrogen society and global energy transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Uruguay. Sir, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Queremos agradecer a la Secretaría por haber incluido este importante y actual punto en la agenda de este Consejo. Como culminación de la primera transición energética en la que Uruguay alcanzó el 97% de la electricidad generada a partir de fuentes renovables, en la segunda transición se continuará la descarbonización de los sectores aún no alcanzados como el transporte y la industria. Para esta segunda transición energética, Uruguay viene avanzando firmemente en el desarrollo del hidrógeno verde a partir de recursos renovables. Uruguay está emitiendo certificaciones del origen de su generación eléctrica con el mecanismo de blockchain para demostrar que el hidrógeno efectivamente generado será verde. A tales efectos de proceder hacia la segunda transición energética, se formuló una hoja de ruta en hidrógeno verde hacia 2040, estructurada en 3 fases. Como parte de la primera fase, Uruguay se encuentra impulsando mecanismos para desarrollar la investigación e innovación. Para esto se lanzó este año el Fondo Sectorial del Hidrógeno, marco en el cual se fomentará la construcción de los primeros proyectos piloto de producción y el uso de hidrógeno verde y derivados. Las propuestas del plan piloto están orientadas al transporte, hidrogenación de aceites vegetales y elaboración de amoníaco y fertilizantes verdes. El objetivo del país es empezar a transitar la curva de conocimiento necesaria para el desarrollo de este nuevo vector energético. Asimismo, a través de la empresa petrolera estatal ANCAP, se han iniciado rondas de intercambio de información para atraer inversión privada y lograr evaluar el potencial de la producción offshore de hidrógeno verde en el largo plazo. En la segunda fase, hacia 2030, el objetivo será aumentar el mercado doméstico, así como la exportación. Para ello es clave el desarrollo de la infraestructura necesaria, la implementación de los incentivos con foco en la atracción de inversiones y la mejora de competitividad en costos. En la última fase, hacia el 2040, se consolidará el desarrollo del mercado doméstico, así como la cadena de valor del hidrógeno y sus derivados, y se podrá escalar hacia la producción y exportación del hidrógeno verde y el amoníaco verde. Entre los puntos claves identificados para el desarrollo de la economía del hidrógeno verde se encuentra el fortalecimiento de la cooperación internacional en las diversas etapas del desarrollo del uso del hidrógeno verde en Uruguay. Estas incluyen aspectos regulatorios e incentivos para optimizar los procesos de permisos y autorizaciones para el desarrollo de proyectos, impulsar la participación ciudadana y generación de capacidades en energías renovables, incluyendo al hidrógeno, realizar estudios y planificación para el desarrollo de una infraestructura vinculada a la instalación de nuevas redes de transmisión eléctrica, gasoductos y eventualmente obras portuarias. En este sentido, entendemos que IRENA puede desempeñar un rol muy relevante, así como también en el vínculo con las necesarias y esenciales fuentes de inversión para el financiamiento de los mencionados proyectos. Muchas gracias por su amable atención.
Thank you, Uruguay. I now give the floor to Italy. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Green hydrogen has the potential to play a strategic role in meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement due to its flexible application in several sectors. Industries such as steel, glass, ceramic, heavy transport, mobility and power, as well as energy security and resiliency. The 5 priorities reported in the Breakthrough Agenda report are fully incorporated in the Italian energy policy and in the deployment of many investment in strategic sectors such as steel production, power generation, road and railway transport, hydrogen valleys. These activities are the backbone of the hydrogen investment strategy of Italy. We are committed to further strengthening the hydrogen sector. Medium and long-term targets have already been set, according to which national hydrogen energy consumption should cover 2% of total final energy consumption by 2030. An increase in demand will be essential for the development of an integrated national hydrogen system. To reach the above target, Italy has planned a comprehensive strategy structured into 2 main areas: reforms and investments, which are both essential for a smooth deployment of hydrogen in the industrial sector. In relation to the demand for green hydrogen in Italy by 2030, 2 sectors have been identified as priorities. The first is the heavy transport sector, including long-haul trucks and trains. The second are the hard-to-abate industries, with specific reference to those sectors in which hydrogen is already used, such as chemical and oil refining, and to industrial activities characterized by high energy intensity and non-scalable by electrification solutions. To meet demand for green hydrogen, estimated at 0.6 megaton in 2030, Italy has planned to install 5 gigawatts of electrolysis capacity by that date. The combined budget available equals to 5.6 billion euros, including public resources from the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, mission innovation and important projects of common European interest. The National Recovery and Resilience Plan alone allocates 3.6 billion of investments in 22 hydrogen valleys in the first wave. The project intends to recover abandoned industrial sites and create the conditions to develop a local hydrogen economy. Hard-to-abate industries promoting the transition from methane to green hydrogen and from gray hydrogen to green hydrogen. Supply chains to support the development of electrolysis factories and the supply chain of equipment, and research and development to improve knowledge of the implementation of the hydrogen vector in all phases, production, storage, and distribution. Finally, let me briefly go through the question about IRENA's support to the deployment of hydrogen worldwide. IRENA is fundamental to collect global information on policy, costs, business model, and to disseminate the results through easy access reports, seminars, and workshops. The IRENA Guide on Hydrogen has been an invaluable tool to build the Italian hydrogen plan. Not less important is the collaborative framework on green hydrogen and the IRENA assistance in the clean hydrogen mission of Mission Innovation. The Hydrogen Action Pact prepared for the G7 contains many recommendations, criteria for green hydrogen, harmonizing standards and certification, and above all, collaborating to closer to jointly accelerate the new market needed for green hydrogen. Thank you, Chair and colleagues, for your attention.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Algeria. You have the floor, please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. إن الجزائر ترى أن هناك إجماع متزايد على أن الهيدروجين بصفة عامة والهيدروجين الأخضر بصفة خاصة سيلعب دورا هاما في الانتقال إلى مستقبل طاقة منخفضة الكربون. ومع ذلك فإن تطوير الهيدروجين الأخضر يتطلب تقارب أطر السياسات على المستويات المحلية والإقليمية والعالمية، وذلك من أجل أخذ جزء معتبر في مستقبل نظام الطاقوي العالمي منخفض الكربون. ولنشر هذا النوع من الطاقة والتي تبقى حديثة النشأة في كل أنحاء العالم، نرى أنه من الضروري خلق ظروف مواتية مثل إنشاء إطار تشريعي وتنظيمي، والذي يعد شرطا أساسيا لتطوير سوق الهيدروجين وتحديد تقنيات الأكثر فائدة والأكثر تكيفا مع مواردنا، وذلك من أجل تحقيق تكاليف إنتاج أكثر تنافسية على المدى المتوسط. السيد الرئيس، إن تطوير التكنولوجيات المنخفضة الكربون مثل الهيدروجين الأخضر يتطلب الأخذ بعين الاعتبار للفوارق الموجودة بين الدول في مجالات التنمية والقدرة المالية لكل دولة. وبالنسبة لإنتاج الهيدروجين الأخضر على المستوى الوطني، واستمرارا للجهود التي تبذلها الجزائر لإنتاج هذا النوع من الطاقة النظيفة، فإن بلادي تعتزم إطلاق مشروعين نموذجيين بجنوب البلاد سنتي 2023 و 2024 بهدف تطوير الخبرة والتحكم التكنولوجي في مجمل سلسلة القيم للهيدروجين الأخضر، بدءا من الإنتاج والتخزين والنقل إلى غاية التطبيقات.
Including production, storage, and applications. The aim behind these two projects is to test the electrolyzers, storage techniques, and transportation techniques. In conclusion, regarding the programmatic activities of WITO, we suggest the implementation of the programmatic activities separately in coordination with IRENA member countries. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I now give the floor to India. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate the efforts of IRENA in accelerating development of hydrogen as a viable source of energy. The collaborative framework on green hydrogen has provided an important platform for discussing all matters related to green hydrogen, including building robust supply chains to link supply centers with markets. A solution-oriented approach of the discussions provides a positive thrust. In this context, I wish to add that India has launched a national green hydrogen mission with the goal to make India a global hub for green hydrogen production and export. The mission will lead to significant decarbonization of the economy, reduce dependence on fossil fuel imports, and enable India to assume technology and market leadership in green hydrogen. We aim to produce 5 million tons of green hydrogen annually that will result in 50 million tons of cumulative CO2 emissions abatement. The initiative seeks to target all aspects of the product life cycle. On the demand creation front, green hydrogen consumption obligation, which shall mandate the use of an annually increased percentage of green hydrogen or green ammonia in the total consumption of hydrogen, ammonia, and fertilizer production and petroleum refining, as well as mandate blending of a specified percentage of green hydrogen in city gas distribution networks. On the supply front, strategic interventions for green hydrogen transition or SITE initiative will be launched. This program comprises a basket of financial incentives and non-financial measures to encourage production of low-cost green hydrogen for domestic manufacturing of related equipment and technologies. Further, the development of infrastructure and supply chains in form of pipelines, tankers, intermediate storage, and last leg distribution networks is being undertaken. Mr. Chairman, India is willing to coordinate efforts for regulations and standards development in line with the industry requirements for emerging technologies. It is important for international community to work together to develop relevant standards at the very outset, with voices of all stakeholders included in the decision-making process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, India. I now give the floor to Cyprus. You have the floor, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation and for setting this important topic. Currently, Cyprus does not have hydrogen or any form of natural gas in its energy mix, while renewable energy targets were exceeded by more than 30% for 2021. While natural gas is a bridging fuel and plans are underway for importing LNG through a leased floating gas regasification unit, FSRU, having a capacity of 65 gigawatt hours per day, this infrastructure will be hydrogen ready for future use. There are also a few sites in Cyprus with installations producing biogas from anaerobic digestion of animal waste and using it to cogenerate electricity and heat. That can support in the future of the hydrogen cogeneration. There are also a few hydrogen production facilities, mainly small-scale experimental units for research purposes. Steps are being taken to develop the regulatory framework for hydrogen production, both green and grey-blue, that is projected to be completed by the end of 2022. Cyprus has requested for support from European Commission under the REPowerEU for development of the roadmap for the introduction of hydrogen, the boost of research and development in the area of hydrogen production and storage and utilization. Although the technologies already exist, there is a need for refinement and efficiency boost, while an unprecedented scale is required for the envisaged transition to net zero emissions by prioritizing the sectors that have more economic and technical demand. Some additional points, the need to establish a clear, consistent and transparent definition for all types of hydrogen is needed. A legislative framework in different regions or globally is needed with consistent roles, responsibilities and definitions of regulatory principles to be set for the hydrogen market. A regulatory framework on ownership and operation of hydrogen infrastructure, clarity on cost recovery for hydrogen infrastructure, including retrofitting and repurposing, benefit from sharing information and best practices, establish hydrogen committee that brings together industry and academia and government stakeholders is something that we have done in Cyprus, and we have seen a lot of progress recently. Also, different hydrogen associations exist, a one-stop shop facilitation unit to direct involvement in pilot projects that can help both parties understand better the risk and overcome the households. Last but not least, we welcome the IRENA analysis and international hydrogen trade, and we propose that a dynamic global atlas of hydrogen production, potential and demand forecast in various sectors to be developed, if this is not already in place. Finally, I would like to express Cyprus' appreciation to the work done by Dolph in IRENA for the past 12 years, who is leaving the organization after so many years of dedicated and professional work. Thank you very much, Dolph.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the United Kingdom. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you very much for Dolph's presentation and the excellent work that's been done on hydrogen. We're particularly grateful for your support on the Breakthroughs Agenda report. And in line with the funding report, we see 4 key areas that stand out for immediate priorities for strengthening international cooperation: demand creation, standards and certification, research and innovation, and financial and technical assistance. In the UK, to unlock our potential as a hydrogen economy, we're implementing our hydrogen strategy, and a few highlights are that we are putting in place a public finance support mechanisms, launching a £240 million net zero hydrogen fund, we're publishing the UK low carbon hydrogen standard to help establish a hydrogen certification scheme by 2025 to facilitate international trade. And we set ourselves an ambitious target of generating 10 gigawatts of low carbon hydrogen by 2030. We think IRENA can continue to help by continuing its excellent webinars on green hydrogen, shaping the G7, G20 thinking, and its further analysis on an effective hydrogen hub model to allow for multiple uses of hydrogen. I think, like others, we think there's space to lean in further on the role of low carbon hydrogen in hard to decarbonize sectors, or where there is limited capacity for renewable energy. And we agree with Canada that there's also room for an increased focus on hydrogen supply chains, e.g. in the UK we're already noticing difficulty with electrolyzer supply, and I think others have mentioned that as well. We look forward to engaging, updating members in IRENA on the implementation of our strategy and engaging with the Hydrogen Collaborative Framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Turkey. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dole, for the presentation. We appreciate the efforts of the IRENA on hydrogen. As known, hydrogen is used as a raw material, fuel, energy storage, and transmission in sectors such as industry, transportation, electricity generation, and buildings. And the importance of using hydrogen in its role in avoiding greenhouse gas emissions. As Turkey, we are on the preparation phase of our hydrogen roadmap, and it's supposed to be announced by the end of this year. And with the increasing share of renewables, as around just 54% of our total installed capacity is from renewables, it comes to the forefront by adding it also to the natural gas pipelines and reducing greenhouse gas in the heating sector and supporting the CCS technologies. We believe Turkey is an advantageous country in the green hydrogen sector due to its high renewable utilization potential and low cost of renewable source power plant installations. In that regard, it's possible to establish high-scale solar and wind energy power plants for directly hydrogen production in our country. And this opportunity will only turn into an advantage with the development of, we believe, the electrolyzers, water source purification, and the hydrogen storage and transport technologies. Moreover, the transportation, distribution, and the transmission of hydrogen, we believe that are improvable areas. Being the fourth biggest gas market in Europe, and Turkey is one of the few countries in the world in terms of natural gas transmission and distribution infrastructure. And this situation offers an important opportunity to blend hydrogen with natural gas and export it. And this potential will be realized with the development of hydrogen distribution pipelines and the end-use equipment. As a result of the hydrogen injection, there will be a need for modification or new manufacturing in the gas equipment and devices, and a new market opportunity may arise for domestic gas industry manufacturers. Having announced the net zero target by 2053, we believe hydrogen will make significant contribution to reach our targets. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I give the floor to Colombia. You have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. In Latin America, we have abundant renewable energies, and if infrastructure would help a lot for its transition. According to the IRENA index, Chile, Colombia, and Brazil, they have the biggest index for hydrogen development until now. Colombia produces almost 200,000 tons of hydrogen, as from natural gas being the refinery of petrol, the highest demand. In cost production for green hydrogen, Colombia is relevant in Latin America and at a world level, especially for the high potential of renewable energies in the Caribbean, Guajira, Colombia, in the wind energy and solar energy. It brings low cost of electricity, consequently low cost of green hydrogen. And to this end, we hope to get values to 2050 1.5 kg being competitive compared to Chile and Australia. We have advantages in Colombia compared to the region for its high renewable sources. Colombia is the nexus between Central America and South America, and it has different transport networks of distribution with other 5 countries. It is also between 2 oceans, fostering good trade. At the same time, regulatory measures about hydrogen and energy transition, there is a legal framework that favors developing projects and motivates private and foreign investments. There are different incentives to promote the production, research, and use of hydrogen. The Law 1715 from 2014 and other of energy transition. And there's a new decree that looks to promote the technology for capturing of carbon. Also, in matter of implementation of pilot projects, Colombia leads 3 cooperation projects. One project developed for green energy for e-mobility is in a refinery in Cartagena, and we have 50 kilobytes of capacity where we have a solar farm that is capable to producing 20 kilograms per day. There's another project to produce green hydrogen, also with the mix of natural gas, where it's an electrolyzer of 80 kilowatts of capacity through a solar farm capable of producing almost 4 kilobytes per day. The third project done by OPEX, with its first green hydro generator that can have an autonomy in trips with 6 kilograms. It's also important to boost, in this sense, implementing bigger projects and also at an international level to help accelerate the hydrogen development and to be able to get the use of green hydrogen, ammonia, and ethanol that are essential for the energy transition. Mobility and transport are one of the main fields and one of the most difficult to decarbonize. Moreover, we should have to put efforts for training and professional training to be able to have good knowledge in green hydrogen. IRENA is a strategic partner to develop the international economy of hydrogen, moving forward to international certification of green hydrogen to have a compatibility of sustainability criterion. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Singapore. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and morning to all members and the IRENA colleagues. First, Singapore would like to really welcome the great presentation by IRENA on hydrogen. And we're delighted to learn about all the different hydrogen developments in all the council members and also the countries. Take this opportunity to also share a little bit on the developments on hydrogen in Singapore. Earlier this week, at the Singapore International Energy Week, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Lawrence Wong, announced that Singapore will commit to reach net zero
by 2050. Singapore will peak our emissions earlier, and we pledge to reduce to around 60 million tons of CO2 equivalent in 2030. To support this, the Deputy Prime Minister has announced the launch of Singapore's National Hydrogen Strategy. This will be a roadmap of how hydrogen can support the decarbonization of our economy and the steps for a hydrogen future. I would also like to add that in the earlier presentation, there was a mention that there is about 137 countries that already have their national hydrogen strategy. Happy to let Dolph know that we can add one more to the overall count and bring it to perhaps 138. Now, we foresee that hydrogen can supply up to half of Singapore's power needs by 2050. To do so, we will very soon issue a request for proposal for a commercial project using low-carbon ammonia for power generation. We will also step up R&D efforts and to pledge more funding on this front. In that light, we are happy to note the Clean Hydrogen Project Accelerator, as mentioned by IRENA, and are happy to support this project, and we look forward to more cooperation on this front. Now, for a net zero future, we also believe that closer collaboration globally is needed. Therefore, Singapore will scale up green finance. We believe we need closer collaboration between private capital, governments, philanthropy, and multilateral development banks to bring together financial resources, technical expertise, and capacity building to address the financing gap and make projects viable. We will need better data on projects. We will also need more disclosures by companies, especially to address the concerns on greenwashing. Third, we will also need clearer definitions on what is considered green. On that note, Chair, we look forward to further cooperation on hydrogen with members going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I next give the floor to Paraguay. You have the floor.
Muchas gracias, presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. For I was very pleased for having received the report about green hydrogen by IRENA, developed together with the World Bank and Paraguay. In 2021, we have presented a study for the roadmap of green hydrogen in Paraguay. Nowadays, there are 3 plants projected in green hydrogen. Even though Paraguay is proud of being a country where its electricity system is 100% fed with renewables, one of the biggest challenges is in transport, which is using mainly fossil fuels. Aligned with our development plan for 2030, we have decreased at 20% the fossil fuels and increase the share for 2030 of renewables. Green hydrogen for transport is one of the main alternatives for the national energy agenda. For Paraguay, hydrogen represents big opportunities to develop technical development and energy transition, not only in transport, but also in the industry and other sectors. It would be 100% national and adding value and to different productive sectors. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to France. You have the floor, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Chair. Thank you also, Dolph, for this excellent report. As was said before, decarbonated hydrogen is an industrial sector that is essential so that our economies can reach climate neutrality. decarbonizing industries and the most hard to abate industries. And as was said before, decarbonized hydrogen is an industrial and economic opportunity for our countries. But as you know, there's a lot to be done so as to improve the performance in the sector, in this industry, and to lower the cost of decarbonized hydrogen versus traditional hydrogen. Thus, France has developed a national level strategy for decarbonized hydrogen. We'll invest more than 7 billion euros by 2030. Decarbonized hydrogen will be produced from nuclear energy, amongst others, with three priority objectives. First, decarbonize the industry and the most difficult to abate industries. Secondly, develop heavy mobility for heavy trucks and ships. And thirdly, we will support research and innovation, as well as the development of human skills and industrial skills, so as to promote electrolyzers and also tomorrow's future usages. Our objective is to develop the industrial fabric, our skills and know-how and knowledge, but also we're interested in developing international cooperation, as was said earlier on, and that's our main topic today. International cooperation is essential so that together we can improve on that topic. That's essential. And therefore, international cooperation should focus on technologies and skills and the regulatory framework and industrial projects as well as R&D. Thus, France with its partners has been developing these cooperations involving private and public partners so that everybody can exchange best practices, look at different views, and also help us develop industrial projects as well as our national level projects, be they multilateral or unilateral. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the European Union, and they will join us virtually. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished participants, on behalf of the European Union, I would like to express our support for the work of IRENA on renewable hydrogen. This is particularly relevant to the EU, as with our Repower EU plan to phase out Russian fossil fuel imports, we set an ambitious target to consume 20 million tons of renewable hydrogen by 2030. Both through own production and through imports. The topics covered by IRENA and shared through the collaborative framework on green hydrogen and other dialogues and workshops have helped the EU understand better the wide range of enabling measures that are essential for us to consider when accelerating hydrogen uptake and trade. We express strong appreciation for the work done by IRENA, both in the management of the collaborative framework on green hydrogen and with the publications of the enabling measures roadmaps for green hydrogen developed jointly in 2021 with the World Economic Forum and the three-part report series on global hydrogen trade to meet the 1.5-degree climate goal. We welcome IRENA's recommendation for the G7 Hydrogen Action Pact, including its gap analysis of global hydrogen certification, and support the call to agree on international sustainability criteria for green hydrogen. We invite IRENA to continue the excellent work done so far on renewable hydrogen. In particular, the following topics would need further analysis and discussion. Establishing sustainability criteria, ensuring that renewable hydrogen and its derivatives are truly produced from renewable energy sources and do not indirectly cause an increase in the use of fossil energy. Second, establishing a solid methodology for determining the life cycle emission savings of renewable hydrogen and its derivatives. Third, making sure that supply and demand of hydrogen are matched, prioritizing those sectors with the highest greenhouse gas emission reduction potential and for which greenhouse gas emissions are difficult to abate, such as the industry and some transport applications. And lastly, to cooperate with international partners for the creation of a functioning and rules-based international hydrogen market. We look forward to continuing our participation in IRENA activities and being part of this growing collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Brazil. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation on the subject. Brazil would like to make an observation regarding the harmonization of standards and certification of hydrogen. It is important that the discussions on certification criteria for green hydrogen are conducted in an open, transparent, systematic, and inclusive manner. With almost 170 member states and 16 states in a session, it is our belief that IRENA would be the ideal forum for this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Guatemala. You have the floor.
Muchas gracias,
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to greet and acknowledge the work that IRENA does, a special greeting to UAE for organizing this meeting. On behalf of Guatemala's government, I would like to stress the interest of my country for IRENA's objectives. I would like to inform that the process of adherence is in the final phase in the Congress of the Republic. In the energy sector, we have three important topics to mitigate climate change. First is to prioritize clean energy to generate electric energy. Second is the change in the matrix of energy to cleaner sources. And the third is sustainable mobility, e-mobility. And we have diversified road transport to sustain 24.3% of vehicles that use fossil fuels to replace them with green hydrogen and other biofuels. In coordination with the national energy, we have approved the procurement of 235 megawatts as a firm offered and efficient to cover the demand of the distributors. The previous measure, we hope to have between 50 and 100% of power of distributors that will have to be allocated to new plants that produce energy from renewables. Moreover, a law was approved for incentives for e-mobility, and this presents opportunities for tax exemptions for buying and selling of new electric, hybrid, and hydrogen vehicles. Aligned with this line, the other commitments that Guatemala has at an international level, the Mining and Energy Agency published a norm where it includes green hydrogen in the definition of renewable energy sources. With that, we're going to include it for the energy transition of the country because it will include the production and storage of hydrogen for different use. In this end, the production of energy having also included as other energies as solar PV. We appreciate IRENA's efforts in this field and we hope to have your support. Guatemala firmly believes and promotes renewable energies. 82% of our matrix is generated by renewables with a key role of the agricultural sector, especially in sugar. We hope to contribute with the SDGs for 2030 and the commitments in the contribution of mitigation and adaptation for climate change. We are very proud and we show the will that we have to improve conditions for the planet towards a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Guatemala. If there are no further comments, I now give the floor to the Director General to address the issues raised and provide overall reflections. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, all of you, for a very interesting discussion. I took notes on many interesting suggestions coming up. Working on the regulatory framework and gap analysis, supply demand side, life cycle on hydrogen, talking about the cooperative efforts, way to support country in setting the strategy, sustainable criteria, life cycle approach, and etc. And I prefer, Mr. Chair, if you allow me to turn in a moment to Dolph, I think you deserve respond himself. Also because I think this, the comment made that's also an appreciation of the work the DOF has conducted in these years. And so.
Yes, please, Mr. Dole. Dolph Gielen.
Yes, thank you very much. So thanks to all the members for this very rich discussion. I think what we heard is that there is indeed a lot going on at the national level. This is a very dynamic field, and there is a general recognition that there is a benefit to closer international cooperation around the issue of clean and green hydrogen, and there's an important role for IRENA in this specific field. We heard a strong support for the work of the collaborative framework on green hydrogen, for the exchange of best practices in that framework. The work on standards and certification was generally welcomed, and there was encouragement to deepen that further in order to allow international harmonization. We heard that there is also interest to further provide the latest data on cost and technology status and outlook, as well as the role of hydrogen to decarbonize various sectors, and the issue of the need to mobilize the financing and to accelerate project development was mentioned by a number of delegations, and I also see a role for IRENA in that context. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General, and thank you, Mr. Gielen. And good luck to you in your future endeavor. I think we should all give him a big hand of applause. So this concludes our consideration of item 7 on the agenda.